Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm going to talk about some current events slash cool things to know about and look into, and answer some questions. So here we go. So starting with some current events. First, the oldest biological child of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, has come out saying that they would like to go by the name John, and wear suits and like tuxes. And this child was identified female at birth, and Angelina and Brad are fully supportive of them going by the name John and wearing suits and having hair cut short and everything, which is super amazing and definitely seems like it's giving good publicity and like good, like good vibes towards trans things, that like, oh, like this really famous couple is supportive of their child, which is awesome. I'm using they as a gender neutral pronoun right now for John, because it has not been announced what like what pronouns they prefer. A lot of people are assuming male pronouns, which seems that it would be a good assumption, but it's usually safer to not assume. So I'm using gender neutral pronouns for John right now. So that's really cool. Another thing is there's been a new web series. It's called Brothers, and it's about four FTM female to male trans guys, and it's really cool. They have to like fundraise to get the money to do it, and they've put it together, and it's really great. There's like 6 or 8 episodes, and they're each like 7 minutes long. They're really cool and educational. And it's nice to just like watch a show where like I can actually relate to them. Like that's really cool. Um, so that's been cool. So you should check that out. I'm gonna put links to all of these things below so you can read more about it, look at the videos and whatnot. Another thing, I don't think I've talked about this before. Laverne Cox, who's a famous trans woman of color. You may know her from Orange is the New Black. She released a documentary on trans people, and it's called The T Word. And it is an incredible documentary. It's really informational and educational. It's really good if you want to know more about trans things, or maybe if you want to send it to someone who's not very knowledgeable about trans things. It's really amazing. It's amazing representation, because Laverne Cox is very good at saying things very nicely and clearly, and explaining everything. It has trans men, trans women, trans people of color, so that's really nice to see. And these are all pretty young people, so that's super cool. It was very good. I think it was just like an hour long, and it was absolutely amazing. I loved it. There's also a new trans Lifeline. It's like a suicide hotline thing, run by trans people and for trans people. So this is awesome for any trans people who, who need it, or if you need it, or if someone may need it, you can pass it along to them. What I've heard about this one is that they don't automatically call the police on you, and they don't assume your problem is because you're trans. They are trans people also, and they can help you out. So that site is translifeline.org. I'll write that below, and I'll attach the number as well. Okay, so then I asked on Facebook for my friends to send me any questions they have about trans people that maybe they feel like they can't ask, and I was like, okay, so now's the time to ask. So I got a few really good questions. I got 4 good questions. So let's go. Number 1, what has been the most difficult part of transitioning for you? So I have a few different things. First, I have self-hatred. This has been definitely a struggle. I think a lot of it is internalized homophobia and transphobia, because especially being brought up in like a I went to like a religious high school, and just like constantly, like being told that like people are supposed to be a certain way, that gets internalized, and so I even think those negative thoughts about myself, which is very difficult. Then I have here an example, that I currently identify as pansexual, meaning that I'm open to any gender. But I still tell myself I need to marry a girl, or a nice Jewish girl, but a girl. For one, like, basically I'm thinking not only about myself but about others. I feel like I've done enough like like queer things. Like I've already like transitioned from one gender to another. So like I need to like not be gay. I need to just like, okay, now be like a man and be with a girl. So that's definitely like internalized homophobia and transphobia, and that like I can only have a certain amount of queer in my life, and then I have to like stick to, um, like what people expect. So another thing is that now that I am being seen as a male by my friends and family, I'm being set to the opposite standards of what I used to be set to, based on the gender binary. For example, people now think that I should not have long hair. Um, so people just like assume that like, oh, it's getting long, you need to get a haircut, or otherwise you won't look masculine because boys need to have short hair. Another thing is, the people who do question my gender, especially just, like online or whatever, often question it because of my interests. Because, like, I'll admit I have the interests of a 12-year-old girl. I'm into, like, boy bands. I like One Direction and Justin Bieber. I have, like, One Direction dolls. And, like, yeah, that's not the coolest thing for, like, a 22-year-old guy to have. But that does not change my gender. And I'm aware of that, and I'm okay with that. But other people who have more strict ideas of the gender binary think, oh, well, like maybe you're not a guy, or like maybe you shouldn't tell people about those things. Which is hard, but it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna keep liking what I like, no matter what. Cool. Then just thoughts that I've had that have been a difficult part of my transitioning. Who will love me? How I have a family. Um, like people assume that boys have certain parts and girls have certain parts. So of course, I'm worried that I'm gonna be with someone and they're gonna, like want me to have certain parts and I don't. So that's definitely a worry that I have, and I'm sure other trans people do as well. Um, and also, like how will I have a family? I, I think about like how like other ways that I can go about having a family than like the, like traditional route. So that's a thing I think about, and people definitely bring up to me. So, lastly, will I need to be stealth in the future? Stealth meaning that people won't know that I'm trans, and that I, like wasn't born a male. I think about that definitely like in terms of if I want to go into the process of becoming a rabbi, like will they be accepting if I'm open about my transition? So those are the difficult parts about transitioning. Question number 2. What's something you experienced from well-intentioned people that bothers you? And in parentheses, how can people be better trans allies and advocates? So the number one thing I thought of, is that, I found that a lot of cis allies, so people who are not trans, who are trying to be allies to the trans community, when posting or talking about trans things, um, write trans with the asterisk at the end. Um, and that's bothersome to me because it feels like they aren't putting in the extra effort to really be caught up with what's happening. Trans with an asterisk was used more like maybe a year or two ago at this point, to be more inclusive of everyone in the community. And within the community, people have been deciding it's actually less inclusive. And in most trans places, trans groups and everything that I've seen, the asterisk has been dropped. So the most of the time when I see it being used by cis allies. So that bothers me that they're saying that they're advocating for us when, like, it seems like they're not putting in the effort to look into that. So obviously that's not the worst thing in the world, but like, it's something that I notice. Another thing that bothers me from well-intentioned people is when cis people are getting together and writing up something, or like working on something to advocate for trans people. And I'm not saying that's bad. That is completely awesome. The thing that bothers me, and I think others as well, is if you forget to include trans voices in that. So like if you're advocating for something and you're like writing something up like this, like something needs to be changed so it's better for trans people, like make sure to actually have trans voices in there. Ask some trans people how they feel about it. And another thing from well-intentioned people, and I've definitely heard about this from other trans people as well, is when people, like give me passing tips. So not other trans people, just like cis friends or family, and say like, just like casually say like, oh, like, you to look more masculine, like you have to get a haircut, like you have to do that, and like, oh, like you shouldn't wear that, that doesn't look very masculine. Like sometimes that's nice, but sometimes also it's like maybe that's something I can't change right now. Maybe that's something I don't want to change. Maybe I like to have long hair, so stuff like that. Okay, question 3 reads, I'm interested in the emotions you feel. When you get out, is it a nervous feeling or is it like, I don't care what anyone thinks? Okay, so the first thing about this is that nervousness that I have would be about being like outed, that I'm out with someone and they'll accidentally, like say something that shows them trans. Or being like read or clocked, which are words meaning that like someone realizes that I'm, like not really a boy or that I am trans. So that would be what makes me the most nervous. On the other hand, when I go out, I have gained the freedom of male privilege, and so because of that, I feel amazing when I'm like going out and whatever, and I feel so much less anxiety than I used to when I went out. But also, back to the first point, I'm constantly worried about like, am I flat? Am I wearing my binder? Is my binder showing? Am I being read as male? Am I using masculine gestures? Like, am I sitting in a male way? Am I talking in a male way? So like a lot of those stereotypes stick with me constantly. So number 4, the last question I have, what has surprised you about your process? So I haven't reflected a lot on this question yet. Maybe, like in the future, I can talk more on this point. But what I do have written down is first the freedom that male privilege has brought. I touched on that a minute ago. That I used to be really anxious to go out and do anything at all. And I have gained male privilege, and it is absolutely a freedom and absolutely a privilege that, like I'm not nervous that like men are looking at me, so that's definitely been a wonderful gain. And I am aware that that is a privilege, and like that other people are still struggling because they lack that privilege. So I've definitely thought about that a lot. The second thing I have, the other surprise about my process, is just the courage that I had the courage to start T. Because since I've been on T, I've had more courage to be able to do things and say things. But in order to start T, I had to really take a leap and a leap of faith, especially because certain people weren't wanting me to start yet, and I was really nervous and not really, like nervous about what the future would bring, and just the fact that I had the courage to start TE is really a significant thing, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, see y'all later.